Hello, my name is Julie Williams. I'm a registered migration agent with Migration Down Under, and I'm here to update you on the subclass 482 visa, or sometimes commonly known as the TSS visa. It's a temporary employer-sponsored visa, and how it all works, it requires you to have a skilled occupation in a relevant occupation that is on one or two of the skilled occupation lists. Now the subclass 482 has two occupation lists. It's got the short-term occupation list and it's got the long medium-term occupation list. The short-term list, occupations are able to grant you a 2-year visa as long as you meet eligibility, and the medium long-term occupation list provides you with up to a 4-year visa. It is a temporary visa and it may or may not lead you into a pathway for permanent residency, all dependent on your occupation and which list you're on, and also your circumstances as to whether you're already here in Australia and whether you've held a subclass 482 or the former subclass 457 for a considerable amount of time. So there is eligibility to pathways into permanent residency dependent on your individual circumstances. It doesn't always guarantee you an absolute pathway into permanent residency. Now, what are some of the main eligibility criteria for the TSS or subclass 482? Age, there is no requirement for age. There's no age restriction for the temporary visa. However, if you do wish to pathway into permanent residency, you must be 44 years of age or under to be eligible for any form of skilled migration permanent residency. Number 2, or the next point as far as eligibility for the 482 visa, you have to have a minimum of 2 years post-qualification experience. So whilst you may be a skilled graduate or a skilled migrant having just qualified from university, unless you have the relevant work experience related to that skilled occupation or that qualification you've gained, then you're not going to be able to be sponsored under the TSS or the 482 visa because it requires a minimum of 2 years relevant experience. In some circumstances, you may have the relevant experience in lieu of the qualification. So for example, some occupations require a bachelor degree or equivalent, and in some circumstances you may be able to hold 5 years relevant work experience without having to have the bachelor degree qualification. A bit similar to other occupations where it may only require a diploma graduation, a diploma qualification, then it may require you to have 3 years relevant work experience in lieu of that formal qualification. But if you do have the formal qualification, it requires a minimum of 2 years relevant work experience, and it must be post-qualification. You can't have the experience and then gain the qualification. The experience must be post-qualification. You also must have a level of certain English language. So if you're not from the UK, the US, Canada, Ireland or New Zealand, you must have a formal English language qualification. That can be IELTS, it can be TOEFL, it can also be PT Pearson's academic. So you will need to have that. You don't necessarily have to have a skills assessment, although some occupations do require it. And you may have family members join you on that particular visa, and your family members will be able to have full work rights. Now, as far as family members are concerned, you may only include spouse, and a spouse may mean a married wife or husband or a de facto spouse. And the de facto spouse, if you're not married, you must have evidence that you've lived together for a minimum 12 months to show that you are in a genuine de facto relationship. Other family members that can be included are children under the ages of 18 years. If they are over 18, they must be under 23 and in full-time education. Otherwise, they can't be included in your application for a TSS or a 482 visa. The other thing is that you require is an employer you must have an employer that meets the requirements to be able to sponsor you. Now, as a registered migration agent, we are not recruiters. We cannot find you employment. We cannot find you a sponsor. So if you do contact us, then in regards to the 482 visa, you must have an employer already willing to sponsor and employ you. And it must be full-time employment that they're sponsoring you under. Okay, so a recap of the 482 basic eligibility. You have to be skilled in an occupation that is on one of the skilled occupation lists. You must have a level of English language that meets the requirements for the visa grant. You can include family members such as spouses and children under 18 years of age. You also require work experience. Really very important. You must have a minimum 2 years full-time work experience post-qualification, and you must be able to evidence that by pay slips, tax returns and work references that can be verified. If you need to know more and you're genuine in wanting to apply for a subclass 482 visa and you have an employer willing to sponsor and employ you, please get in touch through the usual means. You can click on the link in below, and if you if you don't already, subscribe to our various social media channels to be able to keep up to date with the latest.